I was born into a family where love was measured, but never spoken. From the outside, we looked perfect. A simple, respectable household. My father was once a businessman, my mother a devoted homemaker, and we were two daughters raised with values. That's what everyone said. But inside that house, there was an invisible line, and I was always standing on the wrong side of it. As the elder daughter, responsibility found me early. I didn't have to be told twice to grow up. I just did. When my father's business collapsed, I was still in college, but I could already see the worry lines forming on his face. Bills piled up, arguments became routine, and the atmosphere of the house shifted from warmth to quiet tension. That was the moment I decided I would fix everything, or at least try. While my classmates dreamed about careers abroad or falling in love, I was calculating expenses. I skipped outings, took part-time jobs, and studied harder than I ever had before. I told myself it was temporary, that once things got better, I'd live my life too. But later has a way of never coming. When I got my first job, I remember holding my salary slip with trembling hands. It wasn't much, but to me it felt like power, the power to ease my family's pain. I handed most of it to my mother that very evening. She didn't hug me. She didn't even smile much. She just nodded and said, "This will help." And somehow that was enough for me. Or at least I convinced myself it was. My younger sister, Ariba, lived in a different world under the same roof. She was softer, more delicate at least in my parents' eyes. Where I was expected to endure, she was allowed to feel. Where I was told to adjust, she was comforted. If I came home late from work, exhausted, my mother would say, "This is your responsibility now." If Ariba stayed up late watching movies, my mother would gently remind her to rest. If I made a mistake, it was a lecture. If she did, it was a joke. At first, I ignored it. Favoritism is easy to overlook when you're busy surviving. But small things pile up. I remember one evening clearly. It was raining heavily, and I had just returned from work, soaked and shivering. I had stopped by a bakery to buy a small cake. It was Ariba's birthday. I walked in, expecting at least a moment of shared happiness. Instead, I found the house already decorated. Relatives were there, laughter filled the air, and on the table sat a beautiful, expensive cake. Not the one I bought. No one told me there was another plan. No one waited for me. I stood there, holding my little box, feeling unnecessary. "Oh, you're here," my mother said casually. "Put that in the kitchen. We already arranged everything. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just dismissal." Ariba hugged everyone else. She smiled, laughed, posed for pictures. When she finally looked at me, she said, "You didn't have to bring anything. Didn't have to." I smiled anyway. I always did. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the unopened cake box beside me. It felt silly to cry over something so small, but it wasn't about the cake. It was about what it represented. I was present but never included, needed but never cherished. Over the years, this became my normal. I paid bills, covered emergencies, and quietly filled every gap my family had. When my father needed money for a failed investment, I gave it. When household expenses rose, I adjusted. When Ariba wanted something, a new phone, clothes, courses, it somehow became my responsibility too. "You're the elder one," and my mother would say, "This is what you're supposed to do," and I believed her. Because believing anything else would mean accepting a painful truth, that love in my family wasn't unconditional. It was earned, and no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. Still, I held on to hope. I thought maybe one day they would see me, not as a provider, not as a solution, but as a daughter. Someone to be valued, someone to be loved. I didn't know then that the moment that would shatter that hope completely was already on its way. When my parents told me about Ariba's marriage proposal, I remember the exact feeling. That rushed through me relief, not just happiness relief. Finally, something good was happening in our lives. After years of stress, financial struggles, and silent sacrifices, this felt like a turning point. Ariba had found a good match. My parents were excited again, and for the first time in a long while, the house felt alive. And I wanted to be part of it, no more than that. I wanted to belong in it. From the very beginning, I threw myself into the wedding preparations. I increased the amount of money I sent home without being asked. Jewelry, clothes, venue bookings, catering expenses kept rising, and I quietly covered whatever I could. No one explicitly said, "We need you," but they didn't have to. I had trained myself to fill the gaps before anyone noticed them. Phone calls became frequent at first. "Beta, we're thinking of this design. Should we book this hall? Can you transfer a bit more this month?" And every time I answered, suggested, sent. I even took leave from work, planning to go home early and help with everything in person. In my mind, I pictured myself standing beside my sister, helping her get ready, fixing her dupatta, laughing through the chaos. For once, I imagined being included in the memories, not just funding them. But slowly, something began to change. The calls became shorter, then irregular, then almost non-existent. Whenever I called, the conversations felt rushed. "We're busy right now, we'll talk later. Everything is handled without me." At first, I ignored the feeling creeping into my chest. Weddings are hectic, I told myself. Of course they're busy, but deep down, something didn't feel right. One evening I called Ariba, hoping to reconnect. She sounded distracted. "Yeah, everything's going fine," she said quickly. "What about your dress? Did you finalize it?" I asked, trying to sound excited. "Yeah, Amy handled it." "Oh, okay, and the jewelry, also done." There was a pause. "Ariba," I said softly, "why didn't anyone tell me?" "It just happened fast," she replied. Don't overthink." Those two words felt heavier than they should have. A few days later, I found out through a distant relative's social media post that the wedding date had been finalized. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. No one had told me, not my parents, not my sister, no one. That night I called home again, this time unable to ignore the unease anymore. My mother answered. "Amy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "why didn't you tell me the date is fixed?" There was a brief silence. "We were going to tell you," she said casually. "Things have been very hectic." "I'm your daughter," I replied. "I shouldn't have to find out from strangers." Oh, another pause. Then her tone shifted slightly firmer, colder. "Listen," she said, "there's something we need to discuss." My grip tightened on the phone. "What is it?" "It's better if you don't come to the wedding." For a moment I couldn't breathe. "I'm sorry, what?" "The groom's family prefers a simple setup," she continued. "Too many people from our side, especially outspoken ones, can create issues." Outspoken ones. That was me, I'm her sister. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We know," she replied. "But you have a strong personality. Sometimes that doesn't sit well with traditional families. We don't want any complications." Complications? That's what I had become, not a daughter, not a sister, a risk, a problem to be managed. I let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Amy, I paid for half of this wedding. This is not about money," she snapped quickly, but we both knew that wasn't true. Because money was the only reason I had ever mattered in the first place. "Then what is it about?" I asked. "It's about doing what's best for Ariba," she said firmly. "You should understand that, understand?" That word again. Understand why I was good enough to fund the wedding, but not good enough to attend it. My chest felt heavy, like something inside me was cracking open. "And Ariba," I asked quietly, "does she agree with this?" There was a pause. "She doesn't want any issues either." That was enough. I didn't ask anything else, didn't argue, didn't beg. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. All those years of sacrifice, of silencing myself, of accepting less than I deserved, they suddenly became clear. I had mistaken usefulness for love, and now that my presence was inconvenient, I was being erased. "Okay," I said calmly. My mother seemed surprised. "Okay, yes," I replied, "if that's what you all want." I hung up before she could say anything else. The silence in my room felt louder than any argument. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, replaying her words over and over again. "It's better if you don't come. Not needed, not wanted, not even welcome." A few days later, the wedding pictures started appearing online. Ariba looked radiant. My parents looked proud. Guests filled every frame, smiling, celebrating belonging. And me, I wasn't there, not in the pictures, not in the memories, not even in the story of my own sister's wedding. That night, as I scrolled through those images, something inside me finally broke. But beneath the pain, something else quietly took its place. Not anger, not revenge, just a cold, steady realization. If I could be so easily excluded from their biggest moment, then maybe it was time I stopped being the one holding everything together. After the wedding, I didn't call, not the next day, not the next week, not even when I saw the flood of pictures and videos everyone else seemed so eager to share. I simply disappeared. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that I just needed space to process everything, that maybe after some time things would go back to normal. But deep down, I knew something had changed permanently. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fix things. I wasn't trying to understand them. I wasn't trying to earn my place back. I was just done. Still, out of habit more than love, I continued sending money home. Right on time, same amount, no delay. It felt mechanical now, like paying a bill instead of supporting a family. There were no calls of gratitude, no messages of concern, no acknowledgement of the emotional distance that had suddenly grown between us. And maybe that was the most painful part. Nothing had changed for them, only for me. A few weeks passed before my father finally called. I stared at my phone as it rang, my thumb hovering over the screen. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But I answered. "Hello, Beta," he said, his voice neutral, almost casual. "The electricity bill is higher this month. Send a little extra. No, how are you? No, we missed you." No mention of the wedding, just a request, straight to the point. Something inside me tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "I already sent money last week. Yes, but expenses have increased," he replied. "You know how things are." I waited, just for a second, hoping foolishly that maybe he would say something more. He didn't. "I'll see," I said quietly. "Don't delay," he added. "We are depending on you. Depending on you." Those words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. Not "we love you," not "we need you emotionally," just financially. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the walls that suddenly felt unfamiliar. For years, my life had revolved around one purpose: supporting my family. Every decision, every sacrifice, every compromise, that all pointed back to them. But now, for the first time, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. What about me? The answer was uncomfortable. There was no me, and not really. I had built my identity around being needed, around being the one who solved problems, filled gaps, and held everything together. But what happens when the people you're holding together don't value you? The truth came slowly, painfully. But clearly I wasn't a daughter in that house. I was a role, a provider, a safety net, and roles can be replaced, ignored, or dismissed when they become inconvenient. The realization didn't break me the way I expected it to. Instead, it freed me. Days turned into weeks, and something inside me began to shift. I started noticing things I had ignored before: how peaceful my mornings felt without stressful phone calls, how light my evenings were without financial calculations constantly running in my mind. I started doing small things for myself, buying something without guilt, taking a day off just to rest, saying no to things that drained me. At first it felt strange, almost selfish, but then it started to feel right. Meanwhile, the calls from home became more frequent. My mother would call with indirect questions. "When are you visiting? You've become very distant. Is everything okay with you?" But even in those conversations, there was always something missing: accountability. Not once did she say, "We hurt you." Not once did she acknowledge what they had done. It was as if my absence from the wedding was normal, and my silence was the problem. Then came the subtle guilt. "This is not how daughters behave. People are asking about you. You're forgetting your responsibilities." Responsibilities. That word used to control me. Now, it just sounded hollow, because I had finally understood something important. Responsibility without respect is exploitation. And love without inclusion is just an illusion. One evening, I opened my banking app to send the usual monthly transfer. My fingers hovered over the screen. Same amount, same account, same routine, but something felt different. For the first time, I hesitated. not because I couldn't afford it, but because I finally asked myself, why am I still doing this? There was no emotional connection left, no appreciation, no relationship, just expectation. I thought about the wedding. About that one sentence, "It's better if you don't come." And suddenly, everything became clear. They had already shown me my place in their lives. I was the one refusing to accept it. My hand slowly moved away from the screen. I closed the app, and in that quiet, simple moment, I made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. If they could remove me from their most important moment, then I could remove myself from the role they only valued me for. No announcements, no warnings, no arguments, just silence. A different kind this time, not painful. Not empty, but powerful, because this silence wasn't forced on me. I chose it, and for the first time in my life, I chose myself. The first month I didn't send money, nothing happened. At least nothing immediate, no calls, no messages, no sudden confrontation. It was almost peaceful. For a brief moment, I wondered if they had finally understood. Maybe they realized what they had done. Maybe they were giving me space the way I had silently begged them to all those years. But that illusion didn't last long. By the second week of the next month, the calls began. First, my mother. Her voice carried a forced calm. "Beta, did you forget to send the money this month?" "No." I replied simply. There was a pause. "Oh, then maybe you were busy." I wasn't. Another pause, longer this time. "Then," she asked, her tone tightening, "I didn't send it." The silence on the other end turned heavy. "What do you mean you didn't send it?" she said, confusion quickly turning into irritation. "Expenses are pending. Your father has been waiting." I leaned back in my chair, my heart steady in a way that surprised even me. "I know," I said calmly. "Then why would you do this?" she demanded. "This is not a joke." "It's not a joke," I replied. "It's a decision." That word hit harder than I expected. A decision, something I had never been allowed to make without considering them first. "You can't just decide to stop," she said sharply. "We are your parents, and I am your daughter." I answered quietly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said something that would have shattered me months ago. "Is this about the wedding? You're still holding on to that?" I closed my eyes briefly, letting the irony settle. Still holding on to that, as if being excluded from one of the most important moments of my sister's life was a small misunderstanding. As if it was something I should have simply moved on from. "It's not about holding on to it," I said slowly. "It's about understanding it." "What does that even mean?" she snapped. "It means I finally understood where I stand in this family." "You're overthinking," she said dismissively. "We did what was necessary, and now," I replied, my voice steady, "so am I." She didn't like that. I could hear it in her breathing, in the slight tremble of control slipping from her tone. "This is selfish," she said. "After everything we've done for you," I almost laughed. "Everything you've done for me, but I didn't interrupt." Because for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. "I'm not doing this to hurt you," I said calmly. "I'm doing this because I can't keep supporting people who don't value me." "That's not true," she argued quickly. "We value you, then why wasn't I at the wedding?" I asked. Silence, not denial, not explanation, just silence. And that silence said everything. A few days later, my father called. His tone was different, less emotional, more direct. "This needs to stop," he said. "We are facing difficulties." "I understand," I replied. "Then send the money," he said plainly. I took a deep breath. For years, I supported this family without question. I said, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. "And now," he asked. "Now I want something in return." "What?" he said, almost impatient. "Respect." I answered. Another silence. But this one felt different, uncomfortable, because respect isn't something you can demand last minute when you've spent years ignoring it. "You're being dramatic," he said finally. "No," I replied softly. "I'm being clear." Weeks turned into months. The calls became less frequent, the messages shorter. The urgency faded not because their situation improved, but because they realized something they hadn't expected. I wasn't going to change my mind. And neither were they. There were no grand apologies, no emotional reunions, no sudden realizations. Just distance, real, honest distance. And surprisingly, I was okay with that. More than okay. I was at peace. I started building a life that didn't revolve around obligation. I invested in my own growth, my own happiness. I surrounded myself with people who didn't see me as a resource, but as a person, someone worthy of presence, of inclusion, of love. Sometimes, late at night, I still thought about them, about the house, about the version of me who spent years trying to be enough. And I didn't hate her. I understood her. She did what she thought was right. She gave everything she had. But she didn't know one important truth, that love should never cost you your self-respect. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It didn't involve arguments, blame, or exposing anyone. It was quiet. Simple, final. I stopped giving where I wasn't valued, and in doing so, I gave myself something I had been missing my entire life: freedom.